Hello guys, today I'm making a video on the topic writer's effect. This is a question that's come up in the first language English paper and I would like to talk more about it. Okay, so let's start with the first slide. So the first slide should be giving us the idea. If we go back, sorry guys. So there are particular words and phrases that suggest ideas in motion. Okay, so we have to know the difference between denotations and connotations. Words denotations is the dictionary definition. For example, curious and nosy have the same denotation and they have the same dictionary definitions. Okay. However, they don't have the same tone. So one of them sounds a bit more positive and another one of them sounds bit more negative. So now these two words have the same denotations, but they have different connotations because they have different tones or energy that they portray based on both being positive and both being negative. So a connotation just refers to a tone of a word. So there are two types of connotations, that is positive connotations and negative connotations. Okay, so based on yourself, do you let's say the words aroma and stench, they have the same denotations, but which one do you think is more positive or negative? So based on this example, the word aroma is a positive connotations and the word stench is a negative connotation. Okay, moving on, we have the ideas of sentences being explicit and implicit. So explicit sentences are those that stated clearly or states the idea. For example, it was a dark and stormy night, so he clearly states that the night was dark and stormy. However, implicit sentences are those sentences which are implied but not stated directly, meaning the suggested ideas from the writer's use of the language. Okay, so the writer must understand implicit information based on the facts and clues that are given in the text. For example, from J.M. Barrie's Peter Pan, all children except one grow up. So this gives us the idea that Peter Pan is the only child, right, that grows up. So most of the children remain children and Peter Pan is the only one that's growing up. Now we aren't told explicitly that there was only one boy named Peter Pan and he magically never grew older, but we are prepared for that eventual knowledge by this implicit sentence. Moving on, we have the ideas on how to answer a writer's effect question effectively. So step one is to identify what the writer is trying to achieve, and this can be done by using the sentence to overall effect of the language. And in step two, we have to try to use a suitable transition phrases. This can be like the word X gives the impression, the phrase invites the reader, the term X encourages us to. In step three, we have to identify and embed our first quotation. This can be the writer begins by describing the character. For example, it's staggering forward and gasping. The next step is to use the zoom-in technique to explore the effect of a particular word or technique, and this can be done by the writer's use of the words, for example, this and that, etc. Now, step 5 is to use a suitable analytical verb or phrase. For example, this seems to suggest that answer response could be the writer's use of dynamic words creates an image of the character being in a threatening situation. Okay, so these are the 5 steps that you need to remember when answering a writer's effect question effectively. Now, on the next slide, we're trying to identify powerful words and images chosen by the writer. Now, this is very crucial when doing the writer's effect question because you have to identify these powerful words, right? Writers think about the languages and the images they choose in their writing. Okay, so carefully crafted writing can help us create a sense of character, atmosphere, tone, and setting. Now, these effects are not accidental, but writers deliberately set out to achieve certain effects. Now, what does the word imagery mean? It refers to words and phrases and sensory images that help us to visualize certain scenes in our mind. Now, the metaphors, for example, metaphors, similes, personification, onomatopoeia, are all types of imagery that we can use in the writer's effect. Okay, on the next slide, we're going to showcase some of the important words that you can keep in mind and you can use. For example, you can say the writer, okay, so like you can use the words For example, the word staggering or gasping articulates the idea that the writer is being threatened. So these are words that you can put in for normal words. Okay, so you have articulates, exposes, foreshadows, illustrates, solidifies, suggests, explores, deepens. Now this shows us the insert for the exam paper. I'm not sure which paper this is, but it shows an example of what we have to read. So this shows us the text for the writer's effect question. And on the next slide, we can see that this is a proper writer's effects question. And remember, writer's craft is always question 2D. And it comes in two statements. Now I'm going to analyze how this question works. So you have to reread paragraphs 10 and 16. This is from the insert. Paragraph 10 begins with, he wouldn't normally be interested, and about Lewis. Paragraph 16 is about Lewis' reaction, right? And we have to explain how the writer uses language, meaning this is the writer's effect question, to convey meaning and to create effect in these paragraphs. You should choose at least 3 examples of words or phrases from each paragraph to support your answer. Now, your choices should include the use of imagery, for example, onomatopoeia, personification, simile, etc. And your maximum should be about 200 to 300 words, so you need to structure this based depending on how much you're giving, okay? So maybe 150 words max. I mean, 15 marks are given up to content of your answer, so you have to find out three examples of words in paragraph 10 and also in paragraph 16. And you have to begin by the overall effect of the language created in paragraph 10 talks about how Lewis reacted to this, and depending on the situation or the insert you're given. And on the next slide, we are given some sample answers. So in the marking scheme, it shows us that you can see that Lewis' reaction, it shows us the overview. The word overview means what is the idea of that paragraph. So that's what the whole thing is about. The overall effect of the language created in paragraph 10 shows us the power of the menu. That's how you can bring it. And you can see these points like dark, confident script, intrigued, curling connectors. That's an alliteration used there. These are points that you need to include in your first paragraph. And in the second paragraph, you can see that the overview is given as well and some points given. Okay, so now the vowel. Vowel is just representing the sample answer they can write. So the overall effect of the language creates an image of the character's desperation and vulnerability. Okay, so you can see the overall effect of the language being used there. That word's used. Then the writer's use of the dynamic words. These are connectors or connectives. You can use transition words as well if you like. Then the writer's goes on to describe. The writer's use of the personification. Lastly, the writer then goes on to describe use of imagery. And lastly, it shows us the overall picture. So these are some examples of how you can achieve and score a band, maybe higher band for this writer's effect question. Otherwise, I hope so you enjoyed this video. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.